Welcome to the Tigerlily Foundation chat with the Angel Advocates for the month of June. I don't know if you've been following us on our page for the month, but we've showcased stories and shared our experiences with cancer with Fabianna, Lauren, and myself. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. Hi, ladies. This is the first time we're actually meeting in person. Well, virtual person. So it's wonderful to actually have you here. So thanks for joining.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, it's awesome. Super excited to be here.
Thank you. What I thought we would do and sort of start with is just a brief introduction of who you are, how old you were when you were diagnosed and what that diagnosis looked like and how long ago that was. And then we'll sort of dive into some emotional conversations about how we dealt and what got us through the years that have gone by and what we're up to now. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Awesome. So for those of you that are watching, we encourage you to interact and ask any questions. We're happy to answer them. You can direct it to all of us or one of us specifically, and we'll gladly share that our perspectives with you. So thank you so much for joining. So I'll just kind of take the platform right now and say, I was diagnosed at the age of 36. I actually showed up to my doctor's 2 days after my 36th birthday with a lump that I had found and noticed on my breast. And so was diagnosed in October of 2009 with DCIS, so ductal carcinoma in situ, I believe it was. Believe it or not, I don't actually even recollect the exact title, but I do know that it was stage 3 and had spread to my lymph nodes. But it will be 10 years this October, so I'm really excited that I get to say that and share how the last 10 years have shaped me and my life. So that's sort of briefly where I started. Lauren, how about you?
Yeah, so I was diagnosed almost 5 years ago. I was 26. It was just before my 27th birthday. And I found the lump myself. I was really self-aware of my body, and I was just in the shower one day and I just felt a lump, and I kind of just thought it was like, something weird. And I'm like, maybe it was just kind of due to like, a workout that I did or something. It was in kind of like a weird spot. It wasn't like fully in my breast. It was kind of like more off to the side. So I'm like, maybe it was just like a little like gym swole or something like that. So right. I'm like, I wasn't really stressed out about it. I'm like, okay, like I'll wait a week, and if it's still there, I'll go to the doctor. But I'm like, nah, I'm young, like seem to be healthy. I'll just kind of wait. So I went to the doctor a week later, and of course it actually turned out to be cancer. So it was stage 1 invasive ductal carcinoma, and it was grade 3, so it was more aggressive, but it was like the most common type. So it was ductal and ER/PR positive and HER2 negative. But because of my age and the aggressiveness, I was recommended surgery and chemotherapy and radiation. So I opted for the lumpectomy and chemotherapy and radiation. And that was 4.5 years ago. It'll be 5 years in January.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah,
congratulations.
It's super exciting to say 5 years. So that's nice.
Yeah, it is. And did you do the 1-year Herceptin?
No, I did not.
Okay.
I think that's just for HER2 positive, and I was HER2 negative.
Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for sharing. And Fabianna, what's your story?
Yeah, so my story started 14 years ago. I was 27. My daughter was a year old at the time. So it was very strange how everything kind of transpired. I had a really rough pregnancy with my daughter. After I had given birth, they found out that I had an autoimmune disease, lupus, that I probably had for years. And they suggested at that point to have a breast reduction surgery to take some weight off my joints. So I went in for a consultation, and he must have felt something in the exam, but didn't really raise red flags to me. And, basically said, you know what, the insurance is going to pay for it anyways. We always err on the side of caution before doing anything. So we're going to do a mammogram. And I said, okay, that's fine. So I wasn't even like, no red flags for me or anything.
Of course.
Had the mammogram, and I knew something was up because I was in the mammogram room way longer than, how you just get that really bad feeling. You're like, oh, something's not right here.
Of course.
Yeah. And so I went back out into the waiting room, and they said, we're going to do an ultrasound. It wasn't even like, and I'm like, okay, here we go. So went in for the ultrasound, and then all of a sudden these doctors are coming in, and people are looking at the screens, and they're whispering and they're talking, and I, get dressed. They tell me to go back to the room, and the doctor comes in, and he's like, we've seen major red flag, and we're actually going to do a needle biopsy today.
Oh, wow. On the spot.
On the spot. He was like, you're really young. We really would like to, do this today. I had nobody with me because it was a consultation for a breast reduction surgery.
Exactly.
That wasn't at the time of, this is 14 years ago. This wasn't at the time of like, cell phones being a huge thing. My parents were watching my daughter. It was just one of those really weird days of like, this chain of events.
Right.
Did the needle biopsy, obviously you have to wait, this and that. And that night I got the call. It was like 9:00 at night.
Same night.
That's
fast.
Yep. Got the call and was in the oncologist's office the next morning. 2 weeks later, I was having obviously you have to wait.
Sorry.
I was having, 2 weeks later, I was having a partial mastectomy. I was stage 2 at that point. This was before they did all of the BRCA testing first. Right. And this is before they did all of those testings and everything that exactly what's going on, exactly what you have. So I went in saying that I wanted a full mastectomy, and they kept saying, you know what, you're so young. This is the beginning stages. We're not super concerned. You're not showing anything else, this and that, whatever. And they gave me a partial mastectomy. When I came out of surgery, I thought I had a full because I was like that flat. And my surgery that was supposed to take 4 hours was like a 10-hour surgery. They couldn't clean margins. It was kind of a nightmare of, the beginning of my journey. Right. And I went into chemotherapy. After the chemotherapy, they were like, yeah, everything looks good. You're looking good, this and that. And, but the problem is that the chemotherapy had done had degenerated my kidney so much because of the lupus. Okay. So I was having a lot of health problems. I was having a lot of health issues. And then going back to my first month appointment, I then had another lump, and it had spread. In the same breast? In the same breast and in the opposite breast. Wow. And at that point, I could no longer have surgery because my kidney was so damaged at that point. They're like, you'll die on the table. Okay. And within that time, I had my BRCA testing, and I tested positive for BRCA, and I was triple negative as well. Okay. So we went into radiation, more chemotherapy, and that's kind of the past 14 years. That's what we've been doing. So I've had no more radiation. I've had chemotherapy. I've had over 150 rounds of chemotherapy at this point, and still on chemotherapy. Okay. So after the mastectomy, it changed your diagnosis. Correct. Yep. Okay. Yep, it did. Okay. So it's so funny to me because so many people say, what is all this money going towards? Why do we do all these fundraisers? Because it seems, and I'm like, but look how far things have come since my initial diagnosis. Because if my initial diagnosis 14 years ago was handled the way diagnoses were handled now, I definitely would not be in where I am right now. Things would definitely be a lot better than they are right now. Right.
at what point within those 14 years did your diagnosis change?
Within the first 3 years.
Okay.
So within the first year, things started to change, and within 3 years is when I started to get meds every, different places, and so chemotherapies changed quite a bit for me, different forms of chemotherapy. But I also, and I know my story a little bit more, but I deal more holistically. Like, I'm now a naturopathic doctor, and so I deal a lot with that, and I attribute my health to how I handled things and how I advocated for myself, which is what I tell so many women to do, because so many women are scared of speaking up and speaking up for their own body. And I wish that I had been more proactive at initial diagnosis to be like, I don't care about the stinking breasts, just take them, instead of, trying to save whatever you can and all of that, and, it's really what I signed all the paperwork to have a full mastectomy, and they fought me tooth and nail, because
that's a really interesting perspective on the conversation, because you were diagnosed so young, 27, you said?
Yeah.
And I was diagnosed at 36, which for me was young. I didn't have kids, and I was single. So I want to talk about that. I want to talk about what our reactions were. And Lauren, I want to get your reaction as well. Yeah. But sort of before we get into
Lauren, how old are you, Lauren? 26?
Yep, just before my 27th birthday. Yeah. So I think we're like right around the same time.
We were all young. We were all very young.
All young, very young, and at different sort of parts of our lives. And so, but before we get into that, I wanted to tell our viewers what Tigerlily Foundation is about and why it's bringing us all together. So it's a National Breast Cancer Foundation, and it provides education, awareness, advocacy, and hands-on support to young women aged 15 to 45 before, during, and after breast cancer. Tigerlily envisions a future where breast cancer diagnosis doesn't inspire fear, but ignites hope for a future. Because we can inspire young women diagnosed with breast cancer to transform inside and out as they journey through treatment to live their best life going forward. We empower young women to be advocates for change, and we feel breast cancer will no longer be a terminal disease, but become a chronic disease that someday will be cured. And so that's sort of, the story in big picture that brings us all together. And so I think, this life can go on for hours, and we can talk for hours about, the science and the medical parts of our diagnosis. And, there's parts of my story that I probably, didn't share, and Lauren probably, we're quite brief, and that's okay. But so what I really want to do is I want to get into the emotional, and how did it make you feel getting that diagnosis outside of perhaps the obvious reactions of fear and anger, and how did you deal with that through your treatments and all the years since then? Lauren, do you want to?
Yeah, sure. So, when you get diagnosed with breast cancer, especially at a young age, that happens because some things are out of alignment, and, you have to eventually face some really hard truths within yourself. So for me, I had to really acknowledge that I was really living in a lot of pain. On the outside, I looked very fit, athletic, and healthy, but on the inside, I was just living in a world of pain that was entirely, of my own doing. And when I was diagnosed, I took it as like, I deserve this. This is my punishment for the way I've been treating my body, for the last, years. And I just kind of allowed it all to happen. Like when I lost my hair, I was like, this is my punishment, with all the potential fertility issues. I was like, I deserve this. Like I took on so much. And then, obviously that's not a healthy way to deal with these emotions at all. So, I wasn't at all a holistic, person at this point in my life. I was the exact opposite of how I am now. But what happened was, because I blamed myself so much and I took on so much pain and agony, it kind of just like fueled me to be like, okay, well, this is going to pass. What can I do differently? Like, how can I change my life? Like,